Hello, welcome to Revenant Reads. I'm Vin, and today for Book Trek 2022, we're talking about Star Trek Picard: The Dark Veil by James Swallow. So, Book Trek is annual event where myself and some other great people are reading and celebrating Star Trek fiction. Last year was a 5 month mission. This year is a 2 month mission. In August, we read Star Trek fiction from the first 5 iterations of Star Trek that we looked at last year. That's Wrath of Book Trek. It was a chance for us to visit old favorites. Um, and that would be everything from the original series, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, or Enterprise. Really kind of what you consider under the still influence either directly or indirectly of Roddenberry. Okay, Gene Roddenberry, the show's creator. Um, in September, it is Strange New Worlds. Yes, that is the title of the new Star Trek series, which is pretty decent, but that's not exactly what it references. We are looking at Star Trek fiction that does not relate to those first 5 iterations. It could be things from the Kelvin timeline, the J.J. Abrams movies. It could be stuff from Kurtzman Trek or New Trek, which includes Picard. It could also be Discovery. Strange New Worlds doesn't have any novels yet. I'm not sure if Lower Decks has stuff. Um, or it can be fiction from other iterations of Star Trek, or I should say, non-screen iterations of Star Trek. Basically, book-only series of Star Trek, like the one that I'm almost done with right now, Star Trek Prometheus, a ship that's never been on screen. This is a crew that exists only in books, so that also qualifies for Strange New Worlds. Um, so it's I know that it has been a difficult hike for some of my co-hosts because New Trek has issues, and believe me, I know it. I'm right there with them. So Star Trek Discovery, I have watched. I think I'm probably more than halfway through the third season. When they're in the future, the further future, I find it hard to want to continue going with that show. I have very little interest in it. I do not think that Discovery's writing is very good. Focuses way too much on the character of Michael Burnham, kind of making her into like a space messiah. It is not ensemble in the way that it should be. There are people on the bridge of the crew on the bridge who I don't even know their names. I don't know anything about them, and yet I see them like every episode. Uh, there's a problem there. There's a problem with a lot of the writing there, and the way that they treat Star Trek canon as well. Treat the universe. A lot of it just doesn't make sense, and it's not a show that I really get a sense cares about science even. Doesn't seem to understand it. A lot of ridiculous things in that show. I'm not a big fan of that one at all. Strange New Worlds, which had its first season, that was much more. It felt more like Trek. It was more ensemble. We had episodes which would focus on each different member of the crew, which was great to see. Some of those episodes were misses for me. I think there were 10 episodes. There were 2 of them that I actively really didn't like. There were a few that I was lukewarm on. There was a couple that I really thought were great. So overall, Strange New Worlds has been a success for me, and I'm interested in when they do publish some books for that. I am definitely interested in that. Now, Star Trek Picard. I am first and foremost a Next Generation fan. Okay, Picard is my captain. It took me a long time to finally kind of watch Picard. It takes me a long time to watch series for Star Trek because it is it's something I do with my wife. We watch these things together, and we always have ever since we basically were first dating. So we don't get to binge watch things for long periods of time. Really, it's like maybe once or twice a week after the kids go to bed, we'll watch an episode or two. It takes us a long time to get through series. So far, I have watched the first season of Picard. And last year for Book Trek, I had read Last Best Hope, which was the first novel. It was a precursor to the series, and this also basically ends up being that as well. And my feelings about Picard are the show. are mixed, but they are mostly positive. I did actually really like the first season at least. I have heard the second season, I've heard from some people it's a total disaster, and I've heard some people say they actually liked it better than the first season. I don't know. I will see where I land with that. But I have been very interested in what Picard has been doing. We saw in the Kelvin timeline, in the Abrams movies, that the Romulan sun goes supernova. And we find out kind of through all of this that it's even more powerful than a regular supernova. It's like there's something, they suspect there's something maybe even artificial about the whole thing. They don't know exactly what's going on. So we saw that was canon. Okay, we saw that in the Abrams movie because the star going supernova was not in the Kelvin timeline; it was in the Prime timeline. That's the thing that sent our Prime Spock over to the Kelvin timeline. So we know that happens. So they're dealing partly with that. They're also dealing with the aftermath of Star Trek Nemesis, the last next gen movie where we had Emperor Shinzon, who's basically a clone of Picard. Kills everybody in the Romulan Senate, and basically tries to take out Earth with a super weapon. And in which, I'm talking about spoilers here. These are older movies now. In which the character of Data, a fan favorite, sacrifices himself. So that movie has its issues. Although I don't hate Nemesis, I have to say. I think there's a lot of stupid things in that movie, like the dune buggy ride and that whole thing that was going on with the planet, and there was some stupidity in that movie, but I think there was also some really good action, and there were some really good moments. There were some good character moments. I overall enjoy that film, probably more than other people do, or at least most other fans. But we're dealing now with the aftermath of Data, right? A major character dead, and that movie came out in the early the early 2000s, and it's like been years and years and years since we see any kind of on-screen effects from that, like what's going on. So Picard is dealing with all those different threads. And whenever I say Picard, I'm talking about the show, not the character necessarily. So we have, the Romulan Empire basically dissolving or going into chaos. We have Data's death. We have all that. And it's picking up all those things and it's continuing them. And I think they actually do a really interesting job with continuing it. We essentially have Picard, who we find out resigned from the Federation, resigned from Starfleet, because it seemed like the Federation lost its way. And I've seen Steve Donahue on his channel. He's one of my co-hosts. Talk about Picard, and one of the reasons I think he doesn't like Picard, and I don't want to put words in his mouth here, but he had mentioned he didn't like the books. I know he was talking about The Last Best Hope, and it seemed to me like it wasn't necessarily the book. It was more like what Picard was showing or representing. That the future of Picard seemed much more of a dystopia. That things were supposed to get better with the future. That's what Trek showed us, and it seemed like we regress maybe almost too much in Picard. And I think that can be an argument to be had. However, I can't help but think that there's a part of me that appreciates a little bit about what Picard is doing. We have all had situations where we don't live up to our ideals, or our heroes fail us. As an American, seeing my country essentially flirt with fascism, seeing my capital be attacked by its own citizenry. There are, my own family members, hearing the sort of things that they say, and you can't believe that this is an American speaking this way. Even though I love them, we have people that we love, things that we love that fail us at times. And that's really what I feel like Picard is about, the show. The Federation did fail, right? It did fail, but how do you come back from it? That's also an important lesson, I think. Overall, in the future in Picard, we are still better. We're a work in progress. And the thing is, maybe in Roddenberry's kind of strict view, humanity was supposed to have totally advanced, but all the time throughout Star Trek, even in the original series, we saw that not everybody did. Star Trek has never had a dearth of corrupt admirals, people who somehow always seem to reach the most top echelon, right, of Starfleet end up having these nefarious schemes and these terrible ideas, and they're dangerous. They haven't been weeded out. They've gotten that far, but they somehow haven't bought into the utopia that they're supposed to be living in. We've had horrifying acts and species and cruelty in Star Trek all the time, but tonally, the show, they didn't show it, right? What's different about Picard is that they show those things more. They show an eye gouge, right? And I think as somebody who is, that will turn off a lot of people. That will turn off people who it just tonally doesn't feel right for Star Trek. And I understand that. I can sympathize with that. As somebody who is a lifelong horror fan, I think I've just got more tolerance for that kind of thing. I don't mind it. We've always seen terrible things in Star Trek. We just didn't see them on screen, or they would be talked about, or they would be kind of sanitized when we'd see it. But if you really think about the things that have been shown in the past or been suggested, they're absolutely horrifying. So Picard shows some of that stuff. I liked the first season. I have to say I did. I liked the first season of Picard. At first, Picard is, he's out of his element. He's old. He can't move the way he used to. He doesn't have the respect that people gave him automatically when he was younger. Some people even have hostility towards him, and they call him, arrogant, and call him out on hubris. And that changes, though, as it goes. As it goes, we start seeing what makes Picard special. We start seeing why he inspires people to, excuse me, to choose a morally right path. I thought it did well with that. I think that show does an excellent job also showing the integration of technology. It's very well done within there. I like the new crew. They're flawed, but we see them working towards ideals. And it's a show really about coming back. How do you come back from mistakes? How do you forgive yourself? How do you forgive others? How do you learn to trust again? Because one of the big things that happens in the past is a terrible, basically terrorist attack on Mars, where synthetic life forms are massacring people. So there is out of fear, they ban synthetic research in the Federation, and they have to come back from that as well. They made decisions out of fear, and they don't have to be permanent. People can falter. Sorry, that was a very long intro talking about just my feelings about Picard. Like I said, I haven't watched the second season yet. I might hate the second season. I don't know, but I liked overall the first season. There were a few things that I definitely have mixed feelings about, but I don't mind the kind of darker tone. I don't mind some of the little bit more, I don't know if I want to call it dystopian. I don't think it's quite showing us a dystopia, but it is showing us something with high ideals that failed to live up to them, and we have to get back there again. We have to get back to believing in ourselves again and believing in the things that we profess to believe, those virtues and ideals. Let's finally start talking about this. This is the second book in the Picard book series, and this is also a prequel. So this takes place a year after Picard resigned from Starfleet. So we're probably was. I think we have a little note in the beginning about exactly when this is. This story takes place in 2386, 7 years after the events of Star Trek Nemesis, and 1 year after the Mars incident and Jean-Luc Picard's resignation from Starfleet. So we're probably, was it like 10 years maybe or something like that at least, before the series Picard opens up. And this is really a Star Trek Titan book. Titan is the ship that William Riker took over as captain. In the books, we never saw it in the series. Although it looks like Star Trek season 3, from what I saw from previews, it looks like we're gonna actually see the Titan on screen finally. I think it appeared in Lower Decks as well. He's joined by his wife Deanna Troi. His son is also on board, and what we have here is them. They're trying to help this kind of mysterious alien species who they find out has created like this massive generation ship to leave their part of the galaxy. and they don't know why. It's their species is very secretive. It's very mysterious, but they're not violent, and the Federation is willing to help them. And things start going wrong, and we end up having a Romulan ship that is nearby that comes and helps out. But there is dissent and there is deception on the Romulan ship, so not everybody on the Romulan ship is on the same page. But we essentially have Riker getting to know a Romulan captain and finding that they actually have a lot in common, that they're more similar than they are different. And we have this species learning to trust again. And again, these go back to the themes that Picard, the series, was dealing with in the aftermath, right? Like, people don't know what to think of the Federation. Should they trust them? Are they really what they said they were? They claim to be the good guys. How could they have abandoned the Romulans to their fate out of fear? And that these are the kind of things, these are the wounds that Riker is trying to heal. He's trying to show people that no, it's not, it's, I think that we should also make a distinction in here between the Federation and Starfleet. It seems like Starfleet really tried to keep up to the ideals. It's the Federation. It's more like the bureaucracy at the top. The politicians who are more self-serving that we saw in the previous book, that end up manipulating things more. But most people in Starfleet still believe in those ideals, and they're trying to do the right thing. So we have Riker trying to do this. He is showing people, through his actions that no, we are moral. We are good guys. We are not going to abandon you. We are here to help. Please open up. Let us understand. That's a lot of what's going on in here. And you have this Romulan commander who's trying to figure out what it is with the Federation and humans as well. Who feels betrayed by them, and he doesn't know if did the Federation do it on purpose? Is the Federation trying to kill the Romulans by leaving to their fate? What's exactly going on? Can he trust Riker? Can Riker trust him? Riker, who is his whole career seen Romulans as deceptive and dealt with things like the Tal Shiar, their secret police. Can he actually find a Romulan who is just as morally clear as Riker is? So everybody is kind of feeling out with trust. Their son, who we found out in the series, was already dead. He had died, but he had a proficiency for languages. So in this book, he's 5 years old. He's obviously still alive, and his sister hasn't been born yet. So we see him as a 5-year-old, and he takes up little chunks here and there. And writers always kind of do a mixed job, I think, with capturing what a 5-year-old might sound like. And Swallow does okay with that. But he's also supposed to be a child who is fairly advanced for his age, especially like sort of a genius when it comes to languages. So we see a little bit of that. We see a little bit of that occurring. I think that the action when it happens in here is actually really good. There's some great ship action. There's some great, I'm not a physicist, but when they do start showing the science, I can believe it. Okay. It's not like I said in Discovery, where I'm like, that doesn't make sense. That's not how light in space works. You can't see that immediately. There's all these things that happen in Discovery that I don't understand. They don't even try to justify it with science most of the time. It just ends up being like magic. In here, when they talk about the science and what they're doing with the ship, and what they're trying to accomplish with like a warp bubble or whatever it might be, they're selling it. They're selling it like science. So even if it's snake oil, which, Star Trek has its technobabble, that's fine. But you got to sell it. You got to sell the science. And Picard, I think, at least does. The series does, and this book did as well. So I like this one overall. I actually, this is the second Picard book, and I liked the first one. The Last Best Hope was certainly not a typical Trek book. It is not an adventure book. It is a book, again, about the Federation losing its way. It's about how that kind of thing can happen. It's about Picard resigning, right? It is not meant to have a happy ending. So that was setting it up for the show. And for what it needed to accomplish, I thought that book did well. And I actually, I gotta say, I like this. I thought this was a good Trek book. It makes me want to read the third book, actually. It makes me want to keep going with this Picard series, because, like I said, I actually liked the characters in Picard. And I thought they had some great character moments in that series. So, I think this is a series I'm gonna stick with, at least for now. I'm gonna, yeah, I don't think I'm not gonna read it this month, but I will eventually continue on with the Picard series. So, if you've read this, again, I'd love to hear your thoughts, or what your thoughts are on New Trek. New Trek overall, I don't necessarily love, but first season of Picard overall got my vote of yes. The first season of Strange New Worlds overall got my vote of yes. Discovery, I can't I can't quite it does not feel like Trek to me. And this is somebody who's watched a lot of Trek is saying that. And Lower Decks, I have watched a couple episodes of. I don't mind it. Some of the humor can be a little bit too manic for me sometimes, but I'm hoping that as I keep going, it'll grow on me, because I've heard that happens. I heard that it gets better as it goes. So I'm willing to keep on going with that. So, sorry, I'm very rambly. Star Trek Picard, The Dark Veil by James Swallow. All right. Happy trekking, everybody. Thank you.